The call Jake was sitting in his small workshop on a floating space station near Earth, sipping cold coffee and staring at the ceiling above him. The lights flickered slightly as usual, and the radio buzzed quietly in the background playing old Earth music from the 21st century. He was bored and waiting for work, which rarely came these days, because robots were doing most of the repair jobs. Now suddenly, his old communicator blinked blue with a strange symbol on the screen, something he had never seen before. The signal came from deep space, from an unknown planet called Zephyra, a place he had only heard about in passing from space travelers and shady traders. It was far and strange and not really known for needing plumbers. He pressed the green button and a soft voice came through the speaker. The voice was calm, but had a strange melody to it, like a song hiding in the wind. The voice said, "Hello, is this Jake the human plumber? I need urgent help. My name is Lyra, and I live alone on Zephyra. My water systems are broken, and I was told only you can fix it." Jake blinked twice and looked around, as if someone was playing a joke on him. But the voice sounded real, the signal was real, and the name Lyra echoed in his head for some reason, like it meant something he could not explain. His heart beat a little faster, maybe because of the mystery, or maybe because he had nothing better to do. He leaned forward and said, "Yes, I am Jake. I am a plumber, but Zephyra is very far, and I don't know anyone there. I have never been to that system. How did you get my contact there?" Was a pause, and then Lyra said softly, "I asked the space networks for the best human plumber. Your name came up. I will pay you well, and I will make sure you are safe. It is only a small job, just a few pipes, nothing to worry about. Please come soon. It is urgent." Communicator blinked again and sent location details and payment offer, which was surprisingly high enough to make Jake sit straight in his chair and rub his chin with interest. He checked the route and realized it would take only a few hours with his ship's warp drive. Packed his toolkit and locked the workshop behind him. The ship door opened with a soft hiss, and he stepped inside the control room, full of blinking lights and humming sounds. He set the coordinates and leaned back as the ship jumped into warp. Space stars stretched into long bright lines as he flew toward the unknown. When he landed on Zephyra, the sky was purple, and the ground was soft and warm under his boots. He looked around and saw strange tall trees with glowing leaves and flying creatures with long wings. The air was clean and sweet, like flowers and fruit mixed together. He walked toward a small silver house standing near a blue river, steam rising from its surface. Door opened before he could knock, and Lyra stepped out. She was tall and slim with purple skin and glowing green eyes. Her hair floated gently as if moved by invisible wind. She smiled, but there was something more in her eyes, something he could not name. "Welcome, Jake," she said, in that same soft musical voice. "I am glad you came. Please come inside." He followed her into the house, which was quiet and full of soft lights. The walls shimmered with color, and the floor was warm under his boots. She showed him the broken pipes, which seemed to work just fine, but he kept quiet and bent down to check them. As he worked, he felt her eyes on him, watching not just his hands, but his face, his arms, his every move. She asked questions about Earth, about his life, and even about his favorite smells and food, which felt strange during a repair job. He answered simply, trying not to look up too much, but her presence was strong. Like the air around her pulled him in and made his thoughts slow and strange. Suddenly, she touched his shoulder gently and said, "You came just in time. The season has started." Jake looked up, confused. "What season? What do you mean?" he asked. Lyra smiled again, but this time her smile was not just friendly. It was deeper, like she was hiding something, or maybe showing something very old and very powerful. She pulled her long hair back and revealed a glowing mark on her neck, a symbol that pulsed with soft blue light. "It means the season of connection," she said. "It only comes once in 12 years, and you are the first human to arrive at the right moment." Jake stood slowly, feeling the room spin a little, his hand still holding a wrench, but his mind racing. He wanted to speak, but something in her eyes stopped him, something strange and beautiful, and maybe dangerous. Then the door behind him closed with a soft sound and locked itself from the inside. Jake turned quickly, but the control panel blinked Red and the lights dimmed slightly. He was not alone with an alien girl anymore. He was inside a moment he did not understand. There was no turning back now. Jake stood in silence. The red light on the door blinked softly behind him, and Lyra stood. Only a few steps away, her glowing eyes fixed on his face, her expression unreadable, her presence still powerful and strange. Took a deep breath and tried to calm the storm inside his head. He was a plumber, not a hero, not a spy, and definitely not someone trained to deal with glowing aliens in locked rooms, with strange symbols on their necks. Lyra walked past him slowly, her steps almost like floating, and she spoke with a soft voice that wrapped around the room like a warm breeze. "Please do not be afraid, Jake. I did not lie. The pipes really do need fixing. But there is something else too, something I cannot fix on my own." Jake looked around the room again. The walls shimmered like water under light, and the air smelled like fruit mixed with metal. He walked over to the main pipe controls and opened the panel inside. Everything looked clean, shiny, and without damage. He touched a sensor, and the reading was perfect. Water pressure, temperature, everything was in balance. He turned to Lyra and said, "I think your systems are fine. Nothing seems broken. Maybe just a false alert." Lyra shook her head gently and stepped closer, her hands folded in front of her, like she was holding back some great truth. "No," she whispered, "not false. Something is wrong, but it is not with the machine. It is with me." Jake blinked and stepped back a little, unsure what she meant. He had come for a simple job, maybe clean a few filters, tighten a few valves. Now he was stuck in a house with an alien who looked at him like he was more than a visitor. "I have never seen a human before," she said. "Not in real life, not like this. Your skin is warm. Your energy feels different. It fills the room with something I cannot explain. I thought I was ready for this, but now I am not sure." Jake tried to speak, but the words felt heavy. His hand touched the control panel again, more out of habit than thought, and then he noticed something strange. Behind the main pipe was a small hatch almost hidden in the wall. He reached for it and opened it slowly. Inside was a strange device, small, silver, and humming softly with a blue light. Pulled it out and turned to Lyra. "What is this?" he asked. "Why is it hidden behind your pipe system?" Lyra's face changed for the first time. She looked almost nervous. Her eyes flickered and her fingers twisted together like she was trying to hold something back. "That is not part of the plumbing," she said quietly. "That is part of me." Jake raised an eyebrow and held the device closer. "What do you mean, part of you? What does this thing do?" "It helps balance me," she said finally. "It controls my energy during the season. Without it, I become too powerful, too emotional, too connected to others around me. And now that you are here, it is reacting in a way I have never seen." Jake looked down at the device again. Its light was pulsing faster, and the hum was louder than before. It felt warm in his hand, like a heartbeat, trying to match his own. He placed it carefully on the floor and looked back at Lyra, whose expression was now filled with something close to fear. He took a step toward her and said, "I came here to fix pipes, not emotions, not alien energy flows, and not mating seasons." "You said this was a simple job." "It was meant to be," she said quickly. "I sent out a call. I just needed someone to keep the system stable while I handled the rest. I did not expect a human to answer, and I did not expect you." Jake shook his head, trying to think clearly, but the air felt thicker. Now the lights above flickered again, and the walls seemed to hum with energy, like the house itself was alive and watching. Turned back to the main system and tried to reset the panel, but the screen showed a message in an alien script he did not understand. He touched a few buttons and the screen blinked red. Lyra moved closer and said, "It is reacting to you, only you. Your presence is changing everything around it, and me. This house is built to respond to its inhabitant, and now it is responding to you." Jake felt a chill move up his spine and looked around the room again. The shimmer on the walls had turned deeper, the colors more vivid, the air warmer. He stepped back and asked, "Are you saying this house is alive?" "Not alive, but linked to me, and now to you," she said, and her voice shook slightly. "This has never happened before. I think the season has chosen you." Jake stared at her, trying to process what that even meant. Chosen for what? And why him? And what happened if he said no, or tried to Leave then. Suddenly a soft alarm echoed through the house, not loud, but sharp and clear. The lights dimmed and a soft female voice in alien language filled the room. Lyra turned pale and looked at him with wide eyes. Another ship has entered orbit. She said quietly, someone is coming, and I don't think they are friendly. Jake picked up his toolkit slowly, but he knew tools would not help now. This was no longer about plumbing. Something much bigger had just begun, and he was already deep inside it. The house was silent again, but it was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. The soft hum of the walls had faded, and even the air felt still, like it was holding its breath. Jake stood in the middle of the room, staring at Lyra, while the sound of the alien voice still echoed faintly in the corners of his mind. Lyra stepped forward slowly, her hands open, her face calm, but her eyes filled with something deeper than fear or worry. She looked at Jake as if trying to read his thoughts, trying to feel what he felt, because she no longer seemed unsure. She seemed ready. Jake asked, what does this mean? Who is coming? Why does the house lock me inside? And why is everything reacting to me? Lyra looked down, then back at him, and began to speak in a slow voice. The season began 3 days ago on Zephyra. Every 12 years our bodies shift, our energy changes. We enter a cycle not just for mating, but for bonding, deep biological and mental connection. We do not choose it, the planet chooses for us, and when it does, we must follow. Jake listened without blinking. Something inside him stirred, as if some part of him knew this was bigger than a job and bigger than a mistake. It felt like fate or something close to it. She continued, I sent out a request for someone to fix my system because I needed stability during this time. But what I received was not just a worker. I received a signal from the planet itself. It allowed your message to come through. And when I saw your face, when I heard your voice, I felt something ancient, something calling. Jake walked to the window and looked out. The sky had changed. The purple clouds were swirling like soft waves above the trees. The river glowed brighter, and creatures in the distance moved faster, as if the world outside was preparing for something. He turned back to her and asked, what happens now if I leave? What happens to you? What happens to me? Lyra stepped closer, the mark on her neck glowing softly again, the color now shifting between blue and green. If you leave, the energy inside me will collapse. I will fall into a deep sleep, and I may not wake for another cycle. My bond to this house, to this land, to you, now is active and cannot be undone easily. Jake felt the air grow warmer again, like it was breathing with them, responding to every word, every movement, even every thought. He tried to clear his head, but her voice wrapped around him like silk, and her eyes held him still. You must understand, she said, this is not a trap and not a trick. This is a choice made by something older than you and me. Our ancestors respected it, and I must respect it too. But if you choose to leave, I will not stop you. I will not force what cannot grow. He looked at her for a long time, trying to read between the lines of her words, trying to decide if this was truth or just a dream in disguise. Then he remembered the device, the strange hum, and how it pulsed with his heartbeat. And he remembered the moment the door closed on its own, not to trap, but to protect. Jake stepped forward and placed a hand near hers, not touching, but close enough for the warmth to pass between them. I do not understand everything he said, but I feel something strange, something I cannot explain, and I know I should leave, but part of me wants to stay and see what this really is. Before Lyra could reply, a sharp beeping came from the wall. The lights flickered again, and a screen showed a dark ship entering the lower sky, sleek and black with sharp angles and no markings. Lyra's face changed, her calm broken by a shadow of worry. That is not one of us, she said, not from this region, and not from this alliance. I think someone intercepted the signal, someone who was watching. Jake stepped back and picked up his scanner, but the screen was filled with static, the interference too strong. He checked the communicator, but the signal was blocked, and the emergency beacon was offline. We must hide the device, Lyra said. If they take it, they can trace the bond and use it for their own power. Some trade in bonded energy, some steal it to create copies and slaves. Jake's heart raced faster. Now this was no longer a mystery. It was danger, real and close. He ran to the tool case, pulled out a small energy dampener and handed it to Lyra. Wrap this around the device, it will make it invisible for now. Lyra nodded and moved quickly. Her hair flowing behind her like a wave of starlight, she covered the device and placed it deep into a hidden compartment. In the wall then she turned back to Jake and said, "I was wrong. This is not just a season. This is something greater. Something started long before. I called you outside." The dark ship circled slowly above the forest, its lights scanning the ground as if hunting for a single name. Jake inside the house, the walls pulsed with light again, the bond between them alive and now watched by eyes unknown. Jake looked at Lyra and knew they had no choice but to face what came next. Together, the sky outside turned darker as the strange ship lowered slowly through the clouds. Its surface shimmered like black glass with sharp silver lines glowing around its edges. The air began to hum with low energy waves, and the trees nearby bent slightly as if bowing or reacting to its force. Inside the house, Jake and Lyra stood close, their bodies still, their breathing quiet as they watched the screen. The ship hovered above the clearing for a moment, and then a small pod dropped from its underside, landing softly near the front door without a sound or sign of warning. Lyra whispered one word under her breath. "Kalor." Jake looked at her confused and said, "Who is Kalor? Do you know him? Is he dangerous?" Lyra nodded slowly, her eyes locked on the door, her face calm, but her body tense. "Kalor is not just another Zephyrin. He is a chosen one from the royal line. Like me, he was promised a bond in the last cycle, but the planet rejected the match and chose no one for him. He has never accepted that, and now he may see you as a thief of what he believes was his by right before." Jake could reply. The door slid open with a hiss, and a tall figure stepped inside. His skin was darker than Lyra's, like deep violet mixed with metallic silver. His eyes burned gold, and his body moved like a warrior shaped by gravity and speed. His clothes were tight, smooth, armored yet elegant, and his voice when he spoke was sharp like crystal slicing air. "You have gone too far, Lyra," he said, his gaze moving from her to Jake, then back again. "You broke the order and invited an outsider during the sacred time, and worse, you allowed the bond to awaken with him." Lyra raised her hand calmly and replied, "The bond is not a choice. It is a response. You of all people should know that, Kalor, you were never chosen, and that was not my doing." Kalor stepped closer, his face cold, but his eyes wild. The house lights flickered as he moved. The bond mark on Lyra's neck pulsed brighter, and Jake felt the heat between them shift like the room itself was reacting to their energy. Jake stepped forward and said, "I do not understand your customs or your claims, but I did not come here for this. I came to fix what was broken, and now I am in something I do not control." Kalor looked at Jake and laughed, but the laugh was not kind. It was bitter and deep and filled with something darker. "You do not even know what you hold," he said. "You walk inside our world and touch things meant for those born of this soil. You cannot hold what is meant to grow from here." Lyra stepped between them, her voice firm and clear. "Jake is not the problem. Kalor, your anger is with fate, not with me, not with him. And you know the council would not support your claim if the bond has already begun." Kalor's eyes narrowed, and he raised his hand, revealing a small glowing orb filled with swirling red light. "The council is far, and the rules do not apply when no witness stands. I am the last bondkeeper from my family, and I will not leave without balance." Jake moved fast, pulling Lyra behind him, his hands gripping a wrench from his belt. Not much against alien tech, but better than nothing. The house responded to the tension. The lights dimmed, the walls shifted slightly as if preparing for defense. Suddenly, the orb in Kalor's hand pulsed and sent a wave of energy toward Jake, but Lyra stepped in front of him, raising her arms. A shield of soft blue light burst from her skin, blocking the blast and sending shockwaves through the room. "Enough," she shouted, her voice echoing through the house. "You cannot force what the planet has denied. You cannot break what has already begun." Kalor stepped back, breathing hard, the orb in his hand now cracked and fading. He looked at Lyra, then at Jake, then at the glowing bond mark on her neck. It shimmered stronger, now reacting to the moment, to the choice already made. He turned slowly, walking toward the door, and as it slid open, he said, "This is not over. The council will hear of this, and when they do, they will not Protect you, and they will not protect the human either." With that he vanished into the shadows, the pod rising into the ship, which began to lift back into the clouds, disappearing into the swirling sky above. The room grew quiet again, the house returning to its normal hum. But something had changed. The bond was now exposed, the secret now known, and the danger now real. Lyra looked at Jake, her face soft and tired, and said, "I am sorry. I did not expect him to come so soon, or so full of anger." Jake placed the wrench back into his belt and said, "I am starting to think your mating season is more like a war season." Lyra gave a small smile, then touched her neck where the mark still glowed and whispered, "The bond is awake now, and we must protect it. No matter what comes next outside." The sky cleared, but the storm inside had only just begun. The silence after Collar's departure felt heavier than his presence. The house no longer hummed with warmth, but instead carried a strange cold stillness, like a cave after the echo fades. Like a heartbeat suddenly missing its rhythm. Jake sat near the control panel, tools forgotten, his thoughts tangled in questions that would not stop spinning. What was he doing here? Why had Lyra really called him, and why did he feel something deeper than fear or attraction, something rooted in instinct? Mystery. Lyra moved quietly around the room, her steps soft, her energy low, her glow dimmed, as if her light had gone into hiding. Her eyes avoided his, and her hands fidgeted with a strip of cloth taken from her robe. She was no longer the confident, glowing alien he first met. She looked almost human, now almost uncertain. Jake broke the silence with a voice low but clear. "I need to know the truth, not the part about bonding or seasons or energy. I need the real truth, Lyra, the part you are still hiding from me." Lyra stopped moving. She turned slowly, her hands falling to her sides, her eyes meeting his with a mix of sorrow and strength. And then she nodded once and spoke in a voice that carried the weight of generations. "I am not just a Zephyrin, not just a woman living alone in a silver house. I am the last daughter of the royal line, hidden away after the fall of our central city when the old bondkeepers were hunted and removed. I was marked at birth for the next cycle, but the council feared my line and declared me unfit." She walked closer, each word weaving a deeper truth into the air. "My request for a repair call was not approved by them. It was sent through a hidden channel, one only the ancient systems still honor. I sent it not just to fix my pipes, but to reach someone the planet might accept, someone different, someone not bound by our broken rules." Jake listened without speaking, his thoughts catching each word like pieces of a puzzle that had no picture. Yet he wanted to be angry, but something in her voice, something honest and almost broken, held him still. "Device you found behind the wall," she said. "It is more than a stabilizer. It is a regulator created by the old ones. It detects true bonds and amplifies them. Once activated, it links two energies permanently, unless reversed within the first phase. Once the mark glows twice, the link is sealed by the planet itself and cannot be undone by any council." Jake looked at the panel where the device had pulsed earlier, where it had responded to him, not just to touch but to presence, and he remembered the warmth, the hum, the strange match of rhythm that felt like his own heartbeat mirrored in another body's. So he asked, "What does that make me now? What does that make us?" Lyra stepped close enough for the warmth to return between them, her mark now pulsing gently like a quiet star. "It makes you my anchor," she said, "and it makes me your mirror. What I feel now you feel, what I face now you face, and if either of us is harmed, the bond reflects that pain to the other." Jake ran a hand through his hair, his thoughts spinning faster. This was no simple connection. This was life entangled, choice removed, path rewritten by ancient design. He looked at her again and asked, "Did you know it would be me? Did you want it to be me?" Lyra looked into his eyes and answered with no hesitation, "I hoped the planet would choose, but I never imagined it would choose so quickly and so strongly. I did not know it'd be you, but when your face appeared on the signal, I felt something open inside me, something I had buried for years." Jake stood and walked toward the window. The purple clouds still rolled above the forest, the river still shimmered with strange light. But now everything looked different, not just because of the truth, but because of what that truth would bring. He turned to Lyra again and said, "So Callar is not the only threat. The council will come next, and when they find out about the bond, they will come to erase it. Lyra nodded slowly. They do not fear me. They fear what? I carry the last true bloodline of the old rulers, bonded now to a human, an outsider, one the planet has accepted. And they have not. That makes us both a threat to the order. Jake took a deep breath and reached out his hand, open, his voice steady. Then we fight together, whatever comes next. We face it not as Plumber, an alien, but as something more, something chosen. Lyra placed her hand in his, her fingers warm, her energy now steady and strong, her voice calm and certain. Then we begin with truth and hold the line no matter the cost outside. The wind began to rise and a new signal blinked on the edge of the screen. Another ship entering orbit inside the bond pulsed brighter than ever, not as a warning but as a promise. Asterisk. The warning signal pulsed again, casting a red light across the room while the house responded with soft vibrations. Like it too was preparing for what came next. Jake tightened the straps of his tool belt, even though he knew no tool he carried could help him against a council ship or the rules of an alien empire. Lyra stood near the wall where the ancient device was hidden, her eyes locked on the scanner, her face calm, but her body still. Her voice came like a whisper through static. They are not sending one ship, they are sending 3, and they are coming fast. Jake moved to the main panel, swiping across strange symbols trying to access the ship controls, but each line he touched flickered with denial. The house was no longer just a home, it was a part of the bond, and now everything ran through that connection. Without it, he was locked out like a stranger in a system made for something greater. Lyra joined him and placed her palm on the panel. At once, the screen opened, revealing layers of coded symbols and pulsing paths. She looked at Jake, her voice quiet but urgent. The system knows you now, but it still obeys me. We have a short window before they land. We must leave this house, or we may never leave at all. Jake followed her to the lower level of the house where soft blue lights lined the floor and the walls were smooth like carved stone. Lyra pressed her hand to a part of the wall and it melted away, revealing a small, round chamber. Inside sat a pod just big enough for 2, its surface silver and smooth, its windows tinted and shaped like the eyes of a night creature. This was built for escape, she said. It is not fast and not armed, but it can cloak and it can take us to the far edge of the system, away from the Council's reach. If we launch now, we can make it to the Ghost Belt before they track our path. Jake stepped inside the pod. The seat shaped itself around him, soft and firm like memory foam woven with light. Lyra entered after him. The door closed behind her, and the chamber sealed itself, the hum of energy rising like a song returning to the chorus. She reached for the controls, and then stopped, her hand hovering over the crystal ignition. Her eyes turned to him, and for a moment, all the urgency faded. Jake, she said, you have one chance now. If you want to walk away, if you want to return to your life, I can launch you alone. They will not follow you. They only want me. Jake looked at her, the woman who had called him through stars, who had offered no clear answers, but also no lies. He thought of his workshop, his old chair, his quiet life, and then he thought of glowing rivers, purple skies, and a bond that felt like destiny. He reached for her hand, placed it over the ignition crystal, and said, we go together. Whatever happens, we face it as one. Pod vibrated once, then lifted into motion, sliding through a tunnel of light hidden under the house. As they moved, Jake saw the inner walls shift and collapse, sealing behind them, like the house was erasing itself piece by piece, hiding any trace of the bond that had bloomed inside. Above them, the council ships entered the sky, black triangles cutting through the purple clouds, their engines silent, but their power loud, each one casting shadows that moved like giants across the forest below. Pod broke through the final layer of the tunnel and shot into open air, cloaked in silence and light. It vanished into the distance, leaving behind the home, the past, and the war that now grew behind them. Inside the pod, Lyra adjusted the path, sending them toward the Ghost Belt, a region filled with floating rock and lost signals where no council dared patrol. She looked over at Jake, her voice soft but steady. They will hunt us, and when they find us, they will try to separate the bond, not because it is wrong, but because it is different, and difference is what they fear. Jake leaned back, watching the stars. Move past like sparks from a fire. Trail his voice calm and sure. Then let them come, we will show them that choice is not weakness, and love is not law. Lara smiled, and for the first time it was not a smile of mystery or sadness, it was a smile of hope, pure and bright like the glow of her mark, which now pulsed in perfect rhythm with the pulse beneath Jake's skin. They sat together, flying through stars, leaving one world behind and heading toward another, not built by bloodlines or control, but by a bond that had never been planned but had chosen them anyway. Behind them the council ships circled the empty house, searching for something that no longer lived within walls, but now lived in motion, in heart, and in future. The ghost belt stretched ahead like a sea of frozen time, giant rocks floating through space like forgotten memories, broken pieces of ancient worlds, drifting endlessly without sound or direction. The pod slipped between them, hidden in cloak mode, silent and invisible, but every second ticking like a heartbeat, too loud to ignore. Inside the pod, Jake adjusted the controls while Lyra ran scans through the ship's core. She looked calm, but her fingers moved fast, her eyes sharp as they watched the energy flow from the bond through the pod itself. The link had grown stronger, so strong now it was no longer just inside them. It was part of the ship, part of their path, part of everything. They had escaped the surface, but not the truth. The council would not stop. They would follow signals through the stars, chase the energy through the void. They would send warnings, threats, messengers, and maybe something worse. Lyra sat beside Jake and opened a small case from the floor. It held an old device, ancient and black, shaped like a coin but covered in thin glowing lines. "This," she said, "is the last thing my mother gave me before she vanished into the storm during her final bond cycle. She never told the council she had found a human. She never told anyone, but the planet knew and the planet accepted. And so did I." Jake turned toward her, his voice low but steady. "What does it do? What happens if you use it?" Lyra held it in her hand and looked forward through the glass, her voice soft. "This is a call, a final link to the planet core, a way to speak not to the council, not to machines, but to the world itself. If it hears us, it will respond. If it responds, it will judge the bond not with rules or fear, but with truth." Jake nodded once, then said, "Then we speak now, not for war, not for running, but for ending this once and for all." Lyra pressed her hand over the coin and whispered ancient words. The bond mark on her neck lit brighter than ever, and the same glow moved through Jake's arm like fire and light woven into one. The pod around them slowed and floated still in the middle of the ghost belt, everything silent as if the stars were holding their breath. Then the light burst, not outside, but within, a beam of energy rising from the coin and expanding into a soft sphere around them. The rocks in the belt slowed as if touched by gravity. The pod shimmered and opened a small channel. A voice, not male, not female, not young, not old, filled the space around them. "You carry the bond of the ancient kind," the voice said. "You carry the mix of worlds, the link that once ruled and was silenced. Why do you come? Why now? Why this?" Jake stood, the light covering his body like warmth without heat, and he said, "I came as a worker," I answered. "A call, but I found something more, something I cannot explain in words. I found connection. I found truth, and I will not run from it. I will not let them erase what chose me." Lyra stepped beside him, her voice clear. "I was born to carry the bond, my bloodline. Marked by time and trial, I was told to hide, to follow rules, to obey fear. But I chose him, and he chose me. And if the planet hears, US now let it decide if we are worthy." The light pulsed once, then twice, then again. The mark on Lyra's neck split open, revealing not blood, but pure energy glowing and rising like mist. Jake felt the same light move through him, lifting his body slightly off the floor, not floating, but being held by something gentle and endless. Then the voice returned, slower, deeper, older. "The bond is true," it said, "the energy complete, the pattern matched and pure. The trial is over, the path is open, the council has no power over this." Sphere faded, and the coin vanished, turning into light and memory, gone as if it had never existed. The pod powered back on systems, returning to normal, but not the same now, faster, cleaner, brighter. The bond had changed everything, and now the path ahead was Clear Lyra looked at Jake, her eyes full of tears that glowed like stardust. And she said, "We are no longer hunted, we are chosen." Jake smiled and reached for her hand. "Then let's go. Make our own home somewhere no one tells us who to baby." Pod turned and flew forward, weaving through the ghost belt, then beyond into open space. Into stars that had never seen love like this, not written by law, but written by light far. Behind the council ships received the signal, the ruling codes now marked void, the bond now outside. Their reach, the energy now protected by the very system. They feared the last daughter of Zephyra, and the human from Earth had rewritten the code, not with power, not with war, but with one single choice: to stand together when the stars tried to pull them apart. And somewhere in the silence of the void, the planet itself breathed for the first time in 1,000 years.